It is 7 p.m. Calling the February 16th, Tuesday, February 16th, Advisory Plan Commission to order. Can we please note the presence of a quorum?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Graham?
Physically here.
Kudos to you.
Mr. Forte?
Present virtually.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Boljarek?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. There are no minutes to approve, having been tabled for the next meeting on March 1st. We move on to review of rules and procedures.
Yes, due to the COVID-19 emergency, as declared by the Governor of Indiana, the format and conduct of the meeting has been modified to comply with executive orders regarding the conduct of public meetings, public hearings, and public gatherings. Relevant portions of the Indiana Open Door Law have been amended or suspended during the pendency of this emergency. Tonight, for our public hearing item, the meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission will open a public hearing. Individuals present will be given 3 minutes to speak. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For items that do not require a public hearing, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications made since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, and the Plan Commission will then act upon the petition. For general rules of conduct this evening, please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, please quietly exit the room. If you are in person, please silence your devices, and if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regards to a public hearing, then you'll fill out a hearing card and bring it to the podium once it is your turn to speak. During comments, please state your name and address, and please do not repeat any previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed. You would be advised when there's approximately 30 seconds remaining. Anyone listening to this meeting virtually who would like to submit comments, they should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with a petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to the Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We'd also like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so that your comments can be put onto the record, and please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. One item of note before we proceed to the item of business for anybody that might be present or hasn't, or present virtually who hasn't looked at the agenda recently, the North Point 2 PUD public hearing has been continued to a future meeting and will not be heard this evening. So our first item of business is the Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 4. Caleb Ernest will present.
Good evening, Commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing Planned Unit Development District. This area addressed by the amendment is approximately 7 acres and is currently zoned the Wheeler Landing PUD District. The area is located generally at the north and west of the intersection of Wheeler Road and State Road 32, directly south of the schools, natatorium, and YMCA. The PUD amendment proposes modifying the architecture, landscape, and parking standards of the Wheeler Landing PUD and UDO as further described in the staff report. This item was introduced at the January 11th City Council meeting. The petitioners held a neighborhood meeting on January 26th. This did receive its public hearing at the February 1st Plan Commission meeting. Since that meeting, staff has not received any public comments, and only grammatical and wording corrections were made to the proposed ordinance per staff's comments. This item is up for recommendation tonight. Eric Douthit with Church, Hiddle, and Antrim and other representatives of the project are here tonight. They do not plan on presenting, but are available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. As Caleb indicated, this is something we have had on previous agendas, and there hasn't been anything new, but to make certain that no commissioners have anything that has not been brought to our attention yet, I'll do a quick round of everybody to give them an opportunity to speak if in fact there are new thoughts. We'll start with Kristen Berkman.
Thanks, Bob. I'm good tonight. Thank you.
Certainly. Going on to Randy Graham. Randy? Is there a problem actually at City Hall?
No, I do not have anything, sorry.
Oh,
Didn't have
okay.
my mic on.
No problems. Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui.
No comments here. Thank you.
Excellent. Dave Schmidt.
No questions, no comments. Thanks.
Certainly. Cindy Spoljarek.
All good, thank you.
Excellent. There being no comments, this item is on our agenda for forwarding a recommendation to City Council. Would somebody care to float a motion for this?
This is Kelleher. I would make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the council on 2102-PUD05, the Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 4.
This is
Thank you.
Maui. I'll second that motion.
Excellent. It has been moved and seconded for sending a favorable recommendation to City Council. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Horkay,
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher,
Yes.
Maui,
Yes.
Mr. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Jarek.
Yes,
Motion carries.
Thank you. That is our only item of business. There is one public hearing item, the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD, presented by Dane Crabtree.
Yes, good evening, Plan Commission. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD, a proposal to rezone approximately 157 acres of AGSF1 agriculture single-family rural zone property on the north side of 191st Street near the intersection of Grand Park Boulevard to a mixed-use PUD. The property is located within the area identified in the Family Sports Capital Vision of the Comprehensive Plan. As you may recall, the petitioner had previously filed a rezone request, Ordinance 20-28, also referenced as the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD for the same property. After receiving a 5-4 favorable recommendation at the December 21st, 2020 APC meeting, the petitioner withdrew the petition, and at the February 8th, 2020 APC meeting, the APC unanimously waived a requirement to wait 3 months after the date of a petition withdrawal. As such, the item before you this evening for a public hearing has both a new docket number and a new ordinance number. However, apart from the former suburban rental community district being changed to a single-family detached for sale district and the Park Trailhead district's number changing from 5 to 2, the project remains largely the same. The district map before you this evening is not it is the most accurate. You can see District 2 over here, which was District 5. The project does now require that any development on the property be substantially compliant with the concept plan as determined by the Director of Community Development, as well as language that requires substantial compliance as determined by the Director with the illustrative character exhibits when they are a controlling standard. And in addition, substantial language has been added for the architectural standard for District 3, the small lot single family north district. The petitioner is not requesting a vote this evening, only a public hearing for which no public comments have been received. The petitioner, Edgerock Development, would like to make a brief presentation, after which they will be available for questions. Also, I will be available if there are questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is yours, Edgerock.
Good evening, Plan Commissioners. Jim Ake resides 543 Potomac Court. Westfield, Indiana, representing Edge Rock LLC tonight with this petition. This petition has been through some twists and turns, and we now feel that the concept plan and district plans match well. We've increased descriptions, and we've increased the language that points to the type of development we are going to have. If you look at the concept plan, it embodies and it tells you where the buildings are going to be located and how that will be developed. We go on into the exhibits, and we've increased the amount of exhibit space so that we can detail more of the architectural standards, and we default in many cases to the UDO and also to other standards that we have developed that are more comprehensive, and we think that serves this district plan well and matches up well, much more so than the previous petition. The anchor point will be the commercial district with the, and we're scrolling through the exhibits now, if you can see them, and concepts that detail some of the architecture. So tonight, I'm looking forward to hearing public comment. We did hold a public meeting on February 11th. There was no real remonstrance. We had 3 people in attendance. And then we have a team here from Edge Rock that can answer any questions. We did receive questions from some commission members, and we answered those. Cindy Spoljarek submitted some questions late last night, and I'll address that after the public meeting. So we appreciate your time tonight, and with that, I'll turn it over to Bob to hold the public hearing, and then I'll be back for additional comments after I hear from the Plan Commission members. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any emails that have been received, or are there any people at City Hall wishing to speak?
Mr. President, we do have one member of the public at City Hall here to speak.
Okay, but there have been no additional emails for the public hearing in written form, correct?
Correct. We have not received any emails at this time.
Okay. Those attending the meeting virtually will go ahead and proceed with the comments from the person at City Hall during this time. If there are any listeners that want to make a comment, please hustle up and send the email to planners@westfield.in.gov so we can move on to you next. So let's hear from the individual at City Hall, please.
Hi, my name is Craig Wood. I live at 167 East 191st Street, which is just down the street from this proposed development. I do also have some development land right across the street from this proposed development, which is generating my concern among some of the information that's been presented. First off, and I've got about 4 or 5 things, so I'm going to try to just go through those, and then you can answer the questions after a bit. First off, I've noticed particularly on the general business District 1, the acreage does not match the scale to map. The map is not to scale, which makes me question if some of the other portions of the exhibit are to scale. I'm concerned when it says pictures of buildings are inspirations. I can get really inspired about a lot of housing around here, but it certainly is not what we built. I question the commonality there. I'm also concerned about density, particularly in both the District 4 South and North. The minimum setback for the side is either 3 feet or 5 feet, and that's pretty tight, folks. Now, I have not heard a specific number of houses that would be in there, but I think we all know that if you put a house about even 3 to 5 feet apart, if there's any significant amount of vinyl on it, folks on both sides are going to be having some property damage. In addition, the possibility of a motor sports facility was not mentioned during the neighborhood meeting, and I'd like some more detail about that facility. I'm concerned about if the homeowners that would would be occupying the houses, wouldn't be aware of that motorsports facility. What's the timeline on it? The church was not mentioned in the neighborhood meeting. I don't have a problem with the church being there. I am concerned if if that is actually permitted in a general business section. I didn't see it mentioned in the listing of acceptable things. Also, the park area sports a number of amenities. I'd like to know who's going to pay for those amenities. Is it the developer? Is it the city? Is it somebody unnamed? I don't know. I would make a note also at the neighborhood meeting, there were no actual project landowners present. Thought that was rather curious. And there are not any project landowners present this evening, unless somebody happens to be on virtually, which makes me a little bit concerned as well. In addition, I'm wondering if the land just sits there without this happening, development going on, what's going to happen with the land? Is it going to get tied up? And then there's also a proposed roundabout in there. I'm really concerned about what the timeline is on that, because that has significant impact on my development property. And I think that's a pretty significant list. Thank you.
Thank you. Have there been any emails received during the course of those comments?
No, let me check. Let me make sure real quick. I'm not losing my mind. We have not received, or we did receive one for this project. I will forward it on right now. It is from Linda Nass, and you will receive it here in just a minute. And it's fairly short, so if you'd like, I can read it out loud as well.
Sure. While we're all waiting for it to arrive and get it in front of us, please do.
All right. Linda Nass is concerned about competition for activities across the street from GPEC for future financial success of the city's investments. She would like to see reasonable components that will be built within the next few years or a set time limit for construction. Are some of these large buildings to be built in phases? Inspiration of pictures and diagrams does not give enough detail. Please make sure the verbiage of the PUD is clear, as pictures don't get built and don't tell us much. Will the park be turned over to the city for maintenance? And that is the end.
Okay, thank you. I did not mention when I opened the public hearing, I believe that was at 7:12. There has been a reasonable amount of time, I believe, probably for others to correspond with us. That being the case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:18. And we'll open the floor back to the petitioner to address the comments that we've heard so far, and then we will get into commissioner comments. Should they choose to, anyway. Rock team. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yes, thank you. On several points I'd like to go through that Mr. Wood mentioned. Let's see. The acreage, Birch, do you want to address that? It's approximate, and the diagram doesn't necessarily proportionally represent, it's a little bit out of proportion. So some of the areas, the acreage is fairly accurate, and maybe the proportion of the drawing doesn't look like it contains that much acreage. Birch, do you have anything to add to that comment? All right, thank you. The exhibits were changed, and we added some additional things as we think through the architecture. And again, the UDO controls as well as the PUD, and we default to the 32 overlay in other instances. And we're pretty spot on with what this looks like. We may reserve the right to make some modifications after some comments from APC members. I have with me Ed Freeman with representing Weekly Homes. He's one of the committed home builders to this project, and I'd like him to address some of the architectural things. And if you don't mind, Ed. Sure.
I'm Ed Freeman with David Weekly Homes, 9310 North Meridian, Indianapolis. The question regarding the spacing between homes, we currently are building what would be the District 4 homes in Suffolk at Oak Manor, which was an amendment to the Oak Manor PUD approved, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. Those homes are all built with 3 and 3 side setbacks or 6 feet apart. And we plan to build similar homes here on the Woods Robinson Briggs property. On the other set of homes, the District 3 homes, those are 10 feet apart, 5 and 5 side setbacks, and those are being built currently in the city of Fishers and in, I'm drawing a blank, in the city of Carmel. Both of those also are being built, and you'll see most of the pictures within the PUD document are those 2 different neighborhoods, homes that we intend to build here at in Westfield. And I guess the only other question as to total number of homes in each section, the total number of homes in the overall development, we feel very strong about the fact that we're not overbuilding, that there are homeowners, future homeowners who are looking for this type of home in this area with all the amenities of Grand Park and everything along State Road 32 and obviously the schools of Westfield, which are very desirable. So thank you.
All right, as to the other comments by Craig regarding the church, it is a permitted use. The park area will be developed by the developer, and at some time we'll pursue, there's options there as to whether it becomes a city trailhead or whether it is maintained by the association or some other entity. But we intend to have that as part of one of our recreational areas and support the green space. And it's donated, the property's donated by the Craig Wood family, so I'm not sure it's Craig, your family? No, it's not. Excuse me? There's another Wood family that would like to see that as a conservancy, and we do respect their wishes in regard to that. The motor sports facility that's proposed would be certainly all enclosed, so there will be no noise proliferated from that and no disruption, and they wouldn't make deliveries during off hours. They would make them during business hours. So that may take care of that question. And then let's see. We didn't put out a public notice to all landowners in that area, so they were noticed. If there aren't any landowners here tonight and for the public hearing, and they weren't at the neighborhood meeting, we did everything we can to get them there, and they were properly noticed. So we fulfilled that requirement. And the roundabout, I'd refer Mr. Woods to the city public works director. We do know that that's something that's contemplated, but we don't have a timeline on that. And then our project is phased. We have a phasing plan that wasn't required, but we do have a phasing plan in place. So with that, I would entertain any comments from APC members at this time.
All right, thank you. We'll go around those present, starting with Randy Graham.
I don't think I have any questions. I think I pretty well understand the project by this point. I like the changes that have been made. I think that Tishner has worked with us and all the way along the way to try to make this a nice looking project. And in my opinion, it is a nice looking project that should have favorable recommendation when the time for that comes. That's my comment.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
I sent some comments in earlier. I don't think I have anything right now, but if I find any, I will add them at the end or send them in to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui.
No comments and no questions. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Yeah, just briefly, as I mentioned before when this went through the first time, is I always had concerns with any project with high density, but I agree with Mr. Graham that I think the changes that were made are well appreciated, and I think there is a good understanding of where the project is at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. David Schmidt.
No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Spoljarek.
Hi. I did send in, as mentioned, probably a fairly decent list of questions and comments about the current proposal. Some had to do with problems I saw in the last proposal that were carried over. Some actually are new concerns. I will address the park issue for a second, since that's been brought up. The PUD basically says that this would be given over to the city. And I have a concern with that, in that we originally approved a trailhead with the Grand Universe project, which is very close to here. So that's already existing and would be taken by the city if that ever happened. Moreover, we don't have this in our park plan. So we don't have a way to fund it. And to tell you the truth, there's so much going on here in terms of the number of residents, the number of rentals, so additional people staying here. When you think about a homeowners association, for instance, they would be, installing and maintaining their own amenities. And our investment has been the linear trail and Grand Park across the way. So additional amenities, in my eyes, should be really put to the developer to maintain. It's an amenity for those residents in that area. That's just how I feel personally. I will say I still have a number of concerns with the mixed use area, and I've made staff and petitioner aware of those, as well as other language issues and things in PD. I didn't want to send those to everybody because I didn't want to violate the open door law, but staff has those, and if anyone's interested, either I or staff can get you those comments that I have. But I appreciate the petitioner's attempts to address my concerns. Thanks.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman.
Thank you. I had a couple of things. I'll start off with the parks where Cindy left off. I guess I'm wanting to understand, has the city been contacted at all regarding this park as far as Chris or Danielle, if they'd have interest in it? I know that it's maybe not in the current plans, but I'm just wondering, has that conversation taken place? And then I thought I heard Dane say, I just need clarification on this, that we're tying the character exhibits to the PUD now. So are they inspiration, or are they specifically being tied? Because under this park, things like a play area for children could be grass. And then in our exhibits, it's this beautiful play set. And the exercise equipment, the picture is perfect. That's what that would be. But it could probably also be something much simpler if we just go with what's in writing in the PUD. So if this park were to happen, and I understand Cindy's concerns, that seems to be a little bit loose between the document and the character exhibits. I would share Cindy's concern about not having amenities for these neighborhoods as well. So I'll just leave that at that. Yesterday, I sent something to the petitioner regarding this road that's going down the middle of the mixed use area. And I have a lot of concern with that from a safety perspective. My understanding is this is supposed to be restaurants and retail. Right now, I think it looks like Clay Terrace, to be honest. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, given the state of Clay Terrace right now. But if we think about Clay Terrace and having a main road that feeds back to two big neighborhoods. So there's over 200 lots, I think, there to the north. And that's going to be a lot of traffic coming through there. And because of the location of this, we are going to have a lot of families and a lot of kids running through this, trying to eat between ball games. And so we just need to think about how this is laid out, how it will be used, and how it can be an amenity and a positive for the city. So I threw out an idea. I just like professionals to look at it and see what they think. But right now, I have a big safety concern with this layout. The other thing I'm just curious about, if the petitioner wants to kind of help us understand, I understand we've had David Weekly Holmes speak tonight, and that's so helpful. And thank you for taking the time to do that. We have a lot of commercial within this as well. Are there partners that are being targeted for this right now that could also present to us, and we understand who's kind of ready to go on this? It looks like the phase plan goes out 2 years. So that's pretty soon. I mean, that's not way down the road. So who are some of the people that are ready to go on this commercial is something I'd really kind of appreciate what the vision is, I guess, on that. And then I think there's been some discussions, but I'll just bring it up on public record again regarding this wording for the golf, tennis, pickleball center. That's pretty broad in the PUD that can encompass pretty much any commercial recreational sport, not just tennis and pickleball. And I think the petitioner was going to look into that, but I don't know where that ended up. So that's it for me tonight. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Some of the comments that were just brought up allude to having presented them previously. I'd like to ask the question of Jim or other team members, because I believe part of their presentation was that they'd received the comments and have addressed them. Is there something amongst the addressed comments that, now that you've heard what others have said, do we need to elaborate further on whatever those responses were? Because it sounds like either they didn't get where they needed to be, or weren't perhaps as comprehensive as they needed to be, or something didn't fully connect. Is there anything further from the EdgeRock team that can help close that gap that you can speak to tonight?
Yes, there's much happening, and that's why we didn't ask for a decision tonight, because it involves a team effort. We did take Ms. Bergman's comments very seriously, and we've had conversation with our architects, and we liked some of the ideas that she put forth with the plaza, changing some of the, make it more, manage traffic a little bit better, manage parking a little bit better, make it really a unique place. So we are working through that, and there are some things we can do, we feel, but we have to run it by the architect, and we've been in conversation with them since we received her comments the other day. She also made a comment about the racket center, and we are changing, we've got a suggestion from staff on it to change the wording on the racket center, and I can read that. A commercial a commercial recreational facility shall be developed in District 1 in the general location of the golf, tennis, pickleball, spa complex depicted from the concept plan. This commercial recreational facility, 1, shall include racket games, i.e. pickleball, tennis, squash, or other similar game sports, and 2, may include, but not be limited to, the following ancillary uses: a fitness center, indoor track, a spa, and indoor-outdoor food and beverage areas. And I think that might clear up some of the intent there, and that is pretty well something that can happen, and we'd like to see it happen sooner than later. As to other things, We've made changes and we will continue to make changes. What I would suggest, Ms. Buljarek, if we could entertain a Zoom meeting next week. You gave us a list of things last night, and we'd like to respond to those. But I'd like to see if we could meet with Kevin Todd and Dane Crabtree and a member of EdgeRock team and in a Zoom meeting next week to go over some of those things that you had mentioned in your correspondence to us.
Well, I mean, that sounds amenable to me. I will say I'd prefer to do this where we could all benefit from the same conversations. You know, I'm one of 9 on the APC and one of 7 on the council. So it's one of those things that a lot of times I don't feel comfortable with it just being me and my comments and that having too much, you know,
well,
input,
maybe,
if you will. So just that comment.
we could just, all right, we'll just respond then we'll have a correspondence and get back to you as soon as we can, preferably tomorrow, with answers to your questions. I think it would be helpful if we could sit down and we could invite other members of the APC, just we have to be limited in what we can do, or another council member if you would prefer. But the offer is out there for you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
And to add to the staff question, Ms. Berkman asked about the park and the amenities there. So I know the actual PUD language lists, I think, like 6 or 7 things that shall be required in there. So regardless of whether or not the character exhibits do not show those things in particular, because the language does say they shall be in there, then they must be included. Generally speaking, illustrative character exhibits should, if they do conflict with language within the PD ordinance, those really should only be used to tie up very minor loose ends on conflicts that are occurring between the language and the character exhibits, not full outright differences. That's all I got.
Hey, Dane, could I add one thing to that? You know, you were just talking about how the exhibits matching the language and things. And one of my concerns with this, especially in the commercial district, obviously, is that we're defaulting to 32 overlay standards. But in fact, when you look at the exhibits, there's a lot of different parts of the State Road 32 overlay architecture that would not be met by those exhibits. And it's very difficult to discern then what applies and why we're even using the State Road 32 overlay, other than that details have to be foresighted. But all the other elements, it seems, are kind of irrelevant when you start looking at those exhibits. So I'm having trouble there trying to figure out what it actually is.
Well, Kevin, I think you can probably elaborate a little bit on this too, but you know, the 32 overlay applying, you know, they're the highest architectural standards we have in the city, so we certainly want most of the buildings in there to look like that. But there are some examples, especially with like the examples shown of either the pickleball or race car facilities that are mostly glass. One of the requirements of the 32 overlay is that exclusive of windows and doors and really things like that, it must be 60% masonry. So to get to that number with a lot of modern architectural types of buildings, that may be difficult to meet. You know, if you're looking at things that may, you know, have more modern pieces like metal and things like that. And so it's really to close those gaps as opposed to be outright exhibits controlling. Kevin?
Yeah, so this may be another way to think about this or say this. If there's a written standard in either the UDO or the PUD that is not specifically altered by a written standard in the PUD, then that's the standard that applies, period. And if there's a conflict, I suppose, on an exhibit or something that doesn't fully align in a character exhibit with what the written standard dictates, the written standard still controls. I mean, I understand what you're getting at. I don't know that there's going to be perfect graphic examples that depict the 32 overlay architecture and massing and theming and all of the stuff that is required by both the 32 overlay and now this PUD. So I suppose we could dispense with the character exhibits if that would make it cleaner.
Well, I don't even know that it's that, but when I look at these images, I see a lot of things that, again, would be opposite of what are the overlay standards. And it's hard to imagine when I look at a certain photo, what standard is applied when. Do you know what I mean? We have a preponderance of flat roofs in a lot of these images and a lot of long expanses without a modulated roof, for instance. You know, is that just going to be okay across the board?
No,
and
no.
again, because staff is the one that approves these things, not us, I just don't know what's actually going to be approved.
You're missing the point, Cindy. The written ordinance still applies. If it says we have to have bump outs and cornices and everything else, it still has to happen.
Well, and that's where, to me, the language when I read basically says these images supersede those requirements of the 32 overlay. I mean, just how I read it. So again, you guys are the ones that interpret it, so that's what's important. You know, not how I'm reading it, I guess, but.
Kelleher here, can I jump in for a sec? I hear what you're both saying, because Kevin and I did talk about this. I had a concern is, you know, what's the bottom line? And he did say the written, and that is the UDO. And I think the confusion is if you go to page 4 of the ordinance under section 7.2, it says that the 32 overlay shall apply in District 1 in the event the standard of the 32 overlay architectural design requirements conflicts with the character exhibits, the illustrative character exhibits shall control. And I think that's the line that is confusing. And if Kevin says, no, we follow the overlay, not the illustrative character exhibits, you know.
So there's probably very few instances where there's an actual conflict. If you can comply with both, right, I mean, then you still have to follow what's written in the 32 overlay. I mean, I suppose there's some circumstances where we could do all of our analysis and come to the point where, yep, there is an actual conflict here. You literally cannot comply with both of these things. In that instance, the way that that's worded is we would follow whatever the character exhibits say. But there's probably the vast majority of things that we're reviewing, we're not going to find that conflict.
And I guess to piggyback off that, what Kevin just said, you know, if there's a exhibit here that is giving you concern that you would not want to see along 191st Street, you know, I guess in that case, let the petitioner and staff know, and they can replace it with one that you are more comfortable with. You know, in these cases, you know, it is more modernist architecture, which, like I said, uses less standard masonry, which is the crux of the 32 overlay. And I think that's where, you know, in the event that those conflict, that's where these come into play. So, you know, every petitioner doesn't have to come in for an architectural PUD amendment for a single building.
I think those explanations are helpful. Thank you.
They are. One additional thing, and things that we don't have actual standards for instance, like this fountain. This is a major focal point, and on the concept plan, it's showing as a very large focal point to the mixed-use area. And the standard within doesn't give any detail, nor do we have any standard. So again, I'm trying to discern when they show a picture saying this is the inspiration. Again, what standard actually applies in that regard?
I mean, Kevin, I'll let you answer if you like, but
I mean, I apologize. I haven't read that, or if I've read that, it's been many days since I've read that. I can't speak to that right now. I mean, without looking at it.
So the PUD ordinance requires that a water feature, you know, it is required in the community, much like is depicted on this concept plan. You know, because the concept plan requires substantial compliance, a fountain of this size, of this nature, will have to be shown on an overall development plan when it comes through. It won't be able to be a small tiny water feature. It will have to be a focal point of this, otherwise it won't comply with the concept plan.
Well, again, it's just very subjective then in terms of an approval, in terms of what would comply, because again, we have an image that's not necessarily to scale, it seems, and we don't have any written standard for it. So again, I'm just trying to make sure that what's being proposed and what is, envisioned is what we're actually going to get.
And I'd raised the question too about the visuals compared to the numbers and the various parts of the whole PUD, and had not really focused that much on the water feature, but agreed that it is shown as an incredibly substantial feature. Just looking at the single family lots north of it, it's the size of probably 15 of those lots collectively, obviously in a circular shape, not rectangular, but that's a lot of water and a lot of pump action for all of the fountains that appear to be envisioned around the perimeter or whatever it is that will keep the water moving and fresh. So, there are a number of things that do need further refinement. So I'm not sure.
I would just like to remind APC members that we are I was going to bring this back as sort of a summary, but we are a tourist, recreational, sports, family destination. We want something that keeps the dollars here. William Knox said in his presentation before City Council about Graham Park that Graham Park generates $1.2 billion in ancillary income. Now, the question is, how much of that does Westfield, Indiana capture? Now, when they leave that park right now, there's nothing across from it. They go to wherever their hotel is. We do have some hotels now, which is good. They may stay here and spend money in our restaurants, but they're going to eat and go back to wherever their domicile is for the weekend or whatever. And those communities are going to grab those extra dollars. We don't want anything what I'm saying is we want to create something special that's attractive and that will draw those people from, when they leave the park, draw them in to do some things. Maybe shopping for some ancillary sports equipment, maybe going to restaurants, sitting on a patio. And I do agree that we can do some special things around the fountain, but these are all features that might require a different architectural style from the 32 overlay, and I think you have to allow some flexibility. Do we want everything to look like the 32 overlay? Is that what we want? Do we want a little something more modern looking that attracts people and keeps them there and has interesting little walkways and cornices and little intricate spots, gathering places for not only our guests, but also for our residents? And I think diversity is what we're trying to build into this, along with excitement. And that's the whole concept of this. We will be bringing people there for two things. Other than the other commercial entities that we're building in there, but the sports complex is going to be huge. Pickleball is a huge sport. It's growing. It fits the Graham Park vision of an ancillary sport. And that'll bring people there constantly. Then you've got the church, which also is attractive to people looking for homes and looking for, I live in a community with a church, and it's been great for our community. And so those are other things. The church members will convene and use the facilities around them, going out for Sunday dinner or doing other things or brunches or whatever. There are ancillary things, and they'll do good things for the north part of our community. So you got to think a little bit, I would ask you to think a little bit differently and allow some leeway in what we're trying to do. And the diversity of materials helps us create that image and creates excitement and capture more dollars for us here in Westfield. And we think We think we've got it pretty good, but I do appreciate Kristen Berkman's comments, and I think we can do a better job of not making it look so in line, but we've got to talk with our architects to see what we can do about that and the traffic. But I think, I hope you can get a perspective on what we're trying to accomplish here for everybody in our community.
Thank you for the comments and explanations. Question for staff. I'm curious, where does this PUD stand in the process of its TAC review?
Yeah, so this did not, the director waived the requirement that this go to TAC this time around because it went through the TAC process back in August or September when it first came through, and because the only change that was made was to the suburban rail community district, and it maintained its character as residential-like in nature. It was not required to go back through TAC this time. So the next step would be for the petitioner to make any revisions necessary and then come back for a recommendation.
All right, and I was asking kind of because of the comments that Kristen had made and the suggestion that she'd offered, and that's going to be something that if it comes to pass in some manner, it seems to me that that's going to be a pretty substantial impact on this layout. Because right now, it would appear that most of the residents that live in the single-family lots, primarily, especially the northern ones, but to a large degree, probably both of them, are more likely to use the eastern entrance along the east side of the athletic area and up across from the church to make their way around, as opposed to going through all of the retail area in that kind of an environment. The only other option is along the western perimeter of it and then through the smaller section of single-family lots that comes out on yet the most western part of the 191st Street access points for it. And if something along the lines of what had been asked is being considered, it would seem like they might need to be back there again. But if they have already satisfied the needs of those folks, and I don't want to try to do their job for them, that's not what we're here for, that's fine, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of, after this meeting, what potentially could be happening, if it's going to be possible to have a return for a March 1st visit and recommendation, or if there might be more time needed to be able to dot all these I's and cross all these T's.
Sure.
Yeah, and just as a point of kind of clarification, when a PUD, a new PUD is submitted, and we send it through our technical advisory committee, frankly, there's often not a lot of feedback given. It's usually a little bit too early in the process for a lot of those folks. They're technical reviewers. They're reviewing construction plans for compliance with sets of standards. They're looking at utility loads and things like that. And oftentimes at a zoning stage, it's really more to give them a heads up of what's coming so they can kind of plan their facilities to anticipate some new load or something that maybe they weren't expecting, or to give them an idea of timing of when some things might be coming online. And often it gives petitioners kind of a preliminary heads up as to where some of their infrastructure or utility pinch points might be, or things that they need to consider or design around. So I just want to be clear, they're not doing a technical review of a concept plan. So any sort of analysis that, we may receive during a development plan or a plat, which is a subsequent stage of our process, they will be going back through that process when they come in and subdivide and develop the site. And at that time, if there's any, I don't even know, traffic concerns or, road design concerns and things of that nature, they'll come up at that point. But this conceptual plan and all conceptual plans in a PUD are just don't get that level of review at this early of a stage from a TAC committee perspective.
Okay, thank you. Before we wrap up, let's do another round of name calling here just to see if there's any additional thoughts that have come to mind that we need to address tonight, starting with Dr. Kelleher.
I just wanted to thank Kevin for working on the revision of the wording of that racket center. I had talked about this with him, and I think we sent it to the development team, and they seemed to be fine with it. So I think it's a good reword of that paragraph. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up. I meant to bring that up too and got off on another tangent that escaped my mind. Andre Maui.
Yeah, I do have some comments this time around. Thank you, Bob. And I was reminded of this when Kristen kind of recapped her suggestions, and that gave me a few things to think about as well. I don't disagree with the concerns that Kristen raised and some of the concepts that she put forth. So I'm glad to hear that the EdgeRock team is looking at some of those things. I want to offer the counterpoint to maybe complement that as the team works on that, and I think Clay Terrace is a good analogy to this, where you have the primary vehicular traffic intersecting the pedestrian pathways, frankly, is what it is. But I think back, and probably what steered us toward that trend was go just on the other side of 31 to Village Park Plaza, where from Thatcher you see a sea of parking with the buildings set back. That was like the previous iteration of lifestyle centers, and we don't like that, and it's objectionable. And we've said many times here that that's not what we ever want to see. I'd say those are competing challenges, and I don't have a solution for that. That's up to the architectural team. But let's not take inside out or outside in as the only two options. I think it's going to have to be a blend of those. Again, I don't have the right solution. I just kind of want to caution against going too far the other direction and ending up back with the other thing that we don't like as well. And that was it. That was my comment.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
May I interject here a little bit about that?
Sure.
My comments are these. You're not seeing, that's a broad boulevard type expanse, and you've got the gray corners there, which could be patio serviced by restaurants, et cetera, already there. You don't see the landscape trees and what we can do with some of that to make it a walkable streetscape for everybody to enjoy, or more of a promenade look. So I want you to be thinking in those terms. And we will also be putting our thinking caps on as well.
Thank you. Victor McCarty.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say much of anything additional. I'll just say I do agree with Andre in regards to the comments that he just made, and referencing back to Mrs. Berkman's graphic that she put together. When I first saw it, I was like, that's something more so we would see, or we would want for our downtown to have more of that walkability and establishing a plaza or not indoor, but ingrained space for residents to enjoy. When it comes to this particular project, as has been described, this is more so for our tourism base. So that way, those who are coming for tournaments and so forth, they have a place to shop, eat, etc. So I would agree that maybe a little bit more blending of the project might be warranted, but just because of what the project is trying to accomplish, I do agree that we should probably lean a little bit more towards having more open-ended space as opposed to closing in, which is what I would love to see for our downtown in the future. But that was just about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Schmidt, any further thoughts?
Nothing additional. I appreciate all the comments from others, but nothing additional from me tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Cindy Spoljarek.
I probably said enough, but thank you.
Got to give you the opportunity. Kristen Berkman.
Thanks, Bob. And I think Andre brings up a really good point about not making seas of parking lots. So I agree with that. But I'll leave you with this last thought, which is you have 12 10-year-old boys that you're taking over to have lunch between ball games. And we don't want to see one of those little boys get run over. So just think of that as you think of this development, because been there, done that with these little guys. And let's just keep our safety hats on, is what I'll say. Thanks.
Thank you. Randy Graham.
My safety hat's always on. That's what I do for a living. I just want to throw that out there. It just struck me as funny, I guess. Not the endangerment of children, but the safety hat thing. I don't have any questions, and I want my comments stand as they were on the record earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have exhausted what we probably need to for Woods Robinson Briggs PUD tonight. So, development team, if you have any final thoughts that you want to share them. If not, be in touch with staff. APC members, if you have anything further to send, do it timely. This is already Tuesday. Usually we're looking for things midweek, which is that much sooner this week. But we'll stay in touch and learn if we're going to be able to see this again on March 1 or a second meeting in March, as the case may be.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the only item, or last item for tonight. Jump through all of the continued items. Are there any random Plan Commission comments from the membership that anybody would like to bring up now? And I'm not going to go calling names, just anybody that might have one, speak up. Hearing none, let's see if Cindy has a council liaison update on anything.
Well, I can report on a few things. We did meet last Monday. We introduced an ordinance amendment to one of our old ordinances that would allow the council president to serve on the APC and the APC president to serve on the BZA. It was just introduced. It was not voted on. We likely will be voting on it next week. And from there, council did appoint me to the APC. I thank them for that, and thank you guys for tolerating me. Then we had some presentations by the Westfield Fire Department and their EMS, which was great. They did a fantastic presentation, so you might want to go back and look at that. And as well as another great one from Grand Park. So if you want any of those, go back and check out the YouTube video. We approved supporting the Mary Wilson Drain Agreement with the County Drainage Board. So we're kind of secondary off to that. We don't have a lot to do with it, but we did need to get on board with this agreement. That's over kind of in the Oak Park area. If anyone's interested, I can get you more information. We approved the Maple Knoll PUD amendment that we recommended last time. And we held introductions for West Fork Whiskey tax abatements, the Midland South PUD, the Union Square Amendment 1, Harmony PUD amendment concerning the signage for Kitty Academy, the one we heard tonight, of course, the Woods Robinson Briggs, and an amendment to the Orchard View PUD. So we do have some significant projects coming our way to consider. That's about it.
Thank you. Has there been a BZA meeting that we can get an update on BZA activities, or no?
Yes, there was a BZA meeting last week.
There was.
Yes, just a single item on the agenda at the corner of 169th and Westfield Park Road, the old Harvey's Collision Center site. There was a use and development standards variance petition for Sunbelt Rentals, who had previously had a site farther west on 169th. Anyway, they wanted to put a tool rental facility in there, and those 2 petitions were approved. And that was it.
Hopefully they're serious this time. Community Development Department, any comments?
No comments at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I'll second
This
that.
is Kelleher, so made.
Who's the second?
Schmitzel, second.
No. Staff, please assure that we all actually do want to adjourn. Call the roll.
Mr. Marquet?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Howie?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Jarek?
Yes.
Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks. Stay warm and dry, and hopefully we're through snow for a while.
Thanks, Bob.